Hi, I'm Reid, the Executive Director for the National Lighting Bureau, and we're here today to present our first annual Tesla Awards. Now, these awards were supposed to be presented at Light Fair, but with Light Fair being canceled this year, we're doing the next best thing, which is through a Zoom meeting. So I'd like to turn it over to Mary Beth Gotti. Mary Beth is a Director at Large for the National Lighting Bureau, and then she has been in charge of these awards. Mary Beth?
Thanks so much, Randy. You know, it was a real pleasure hosting and directing these first Tesla Awards in 2020. And one of the things we could ask, why another lighting awards program? And, you know, when you think about the tenet of the National Lighting Bureau, it's been what? High benefit lighting. You know, providing lighting that has value for people and really trying to showcase projects that do that. We're looking at really showcasing metrics, especially as we develop the program down the road, and really trying to keep a design awards program that's simple. You know, anybody can submit projects. We're trying to do it all online, no real strict requirements, but what are we looking for? You know, collaboration and really demonstrating the value of lighting for various applications that we can then use as best practices and share with others. So again, thank you so much for your participation. And before we get started with asking you a few questions, I'd like to introduce our judges. John Paul Friesener from Lighting Research Center. Rudy Jadwitt, who's one of the directors of the NLB. Howard Lewis, the vice chair of the NLB. Terry McGowan, director at large. And James Yorgey, he's the treasurer of the organization. So I appreciate all their efforts and really doing a great job in helping to judge and evaluate the project submittals. Okay. We have two of the designers online. We have Andrea Aschippers from One Source Associates, and we also have Frank Feist, the lead designer from MCLA. Just a little bit about the project to introduce it. The Duke Ellington School of the Arts is in Georgetown, Washington DC, and it's a nationally recognized high school that specializes in art education. The school occupies a building originally built in 1898 as Western High School, and the District of Columbia Public Schools recently embarked on a multi-million-dollar renovation project to modernize the facility and expand from 171,000 to 271,000 square feet. That's a big addition. So we're talking about the addition of classrooms, dance and art studios, common areas, a media center, as well as a 300-seat performance hall. So quite a large project for sure. So congratulations on a wonderful design. And just to get the discussion going here, just a question. The primary goal of the construction was to add new spaces and modernize the entire building, but the historic nature of this very unique facility was to be retained. And maybe you could talk a little bit about what special challenges this entailed.
Like you mentioned, the school is in historic Georgetown, which is a really very old and quaint neighborhood in the heart of Washington, DC, and it has a lot of neighbors who are concerned about keeping the property and the feel of Georgetown very nice and very beautiful, and sort of keep the historic nature of the setting of the location. So I think one of the big challenges, and I'm sure Frank at MCLA will address this too, was, you know, making sure that the school didn't impede on the neighborhood, that the lighting did not flow into the neighborhood and be disturbance. But I think we wanted to make sure the project invited passersby and neighbors in to feel like, oh, this is an enhanced space, an enhanced building, without, you know, having light pollution for the neighbors to view or to be coming into the space, into the neighborhood. I think that was a big point of the design. And then, you know, the Fine Arts Commission in Washington, DC always has their eye on large construction projects, making sure that all the design decisions made are kept within historic agreements within the city.
Frank, was there anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I would totally agree with that. I mean, part of the effect of that was really limiting what could be done on the exterior. The the reason we have obviously two different designers from different companies here was the scope was partitioned with MCLA working on the theater, sort of a pre-function area, and limited scope at the exterior. So what I can contribute regarding that is really about, there's kind of this elevated portico that's part of the building, the existing structure. And the architect's vision for that was to make it some kind of a lantern. It went through various iterations as the project evolved. At one point, there was a library space that actually occupied most of that portico, but it ended up basically just becoming a terrace area. So how do you create a lantern that doesn't become very obvious and upsetting to the neighbors? We ended up using an uplighting strategy there where we could locate just a few fixtures, create a luminous ceiling that from a distance isn't really even visible. But as you approach it, so visitors to the property, that's when you really get that effect of seeing this glowing without, again, doing light pollution or creating something that's a source of glare for the neighbors.
You mentioned the project was unique and unlike traditional school projects, and to support the architect's vision that the lighting design deviates from the standard educational template to address the needs of these students. Can you talk about some of the specifics of that?
Well, I think Frank was involved in the main theater, which is unusual to have a Broadway, almost a Broadway style theater in a school. So I'll let Frank speak to those main spaces about that were a little bit different from a traditional school.
Exactly. The level of architecture, interior scope in here was really similar to what you might see in a big university, not something we ever really see in high schools. So it was really about the scope of that space. And, you know, approaches were generally pretty similar what you see for a large theater, providing lighting that's accessible for maintenance. So there are catwalks above all these floating ceilings in there, and the downlights are all located so that they can be accessed from above from those catwalks. The one thing that was a little bit different for this theater than you might see in most theaters is it's also doubles as an auditorium. So there are higher light level requirements for that. So we had to design for that as well. Those are really the main differences, just the level of quality that the students have access to here that you wouldn't typically see in a high school theater.
One other area is that if you've seen the photos of the floating orb in the center of the school, which is the Performing Arts Theater, it penetrates up through the roof and through the top of the ceiling of the four-story atrium and comes out onto the rooftop. So I don't think most high school students have this elaborate rooftop deck. I think initially the design was to have another performance space on the rooftop, but it's turned out that the neighborhood and everyone kind of agreed that that might be a little bit disturbing, but the students do still have a rooftop space that can overlook the whole city. So I think the lighting design strategy on the roof deck was to make sure that you could see down through the glass ceiling, or in that case, glass floor, to the orb that penetrates up through, while also maintaining the views of the city. So all the light on the rooftop is very low level. It's all directed downward at the floor. It's downward from the handrails or from small bollards and step lights and things that are all pointing very specifically down to not let any light up and have light pollution up into the city. But I think that's another space that's unique to a high school, would be to have this miraculous rooftop deck.
Makes you want to go back to school, right?
Oh man, this school's amazing. I couldn't imagine going there.
Yeah, and that touches on a great point. One of the challenges of this project was there are so many viewing angles, the skylight introducing another one. So we had to be sensitive to all the lighting in that atrium space and at the roof as to where people could be looking so that nobody was looking into a light fixture.
Any other information you'd like to add on illumination levels? You've mentioned a little bit about that, but color quality in the various spaces?
Yeah, I mean, I think we would have loved to have 90 CRI everywhere at the time, you know, a few years back when we were designing this. That did add kind of a premium cost. So one of the big drivers for this project was cost. I mean, it's just a large space with, you know, over 270 square feet of space, or 270,000 square feet of space. So I think we did end up with 90 CRI in some spaces like the theater, and went down to 80 CRI in the classrooms. But there was so much daylight to mix with the lighting that during the day, I think the lighting quality is really coming from the skylights and the windows. But yeah, we did have a high CRI where we could afford it. And I think that was primarily in the spaces that we're going to be presenting as galleries for the student artwork and for the theater itself. Yeah.
Any feedback you'd like to share from students, faculty, and other occupants of the Duke Ellington School of the Arts?
Well, I don't want to speak for the team, but I know the architects have won many awards on this project. I think they're up to 9 awards for the project. And I don't know how a student could not love to be in that space. It's just wonderful. And it's very simple. So I think it's really meant to showcase the art of the students. And the feedback has been positive. Michelle Obama has videoed or filmed a few videos there for her foundations. Dave Chappelle has come back. I know he was a former student there, an alumnus. He toured Jerry Seinfeld through the renovation as well. And I mean, I think everyone's really proud of it. I had a chance to speak with the CEO of the school a few times, and she's seemed very grateful, and the students, I think, are happy there.
The high color rendering is commendable to head in those directions, but certainly some of the other things that are changing lighting wise is the use of white tuning and color tuning, that sort of thing. Although you also mentioned budget, which flies in the face of that, certainly. If you would be doing the project today, would you look at adding that kind of capability to maintain, the color temperature you want in different spaces, or be able to adjust it?
I mean, for me, I really need to see more scientific studies about those kind of things. Especially in this building, we have so much daylight. From a health standpoint, whether mental or physical, I would be a little surprised to see whether that would really have that much of effect to use that kind of system. But again, it's really until we start seeing more concrete studies come in relation to that, it's hard to recommend to an owner to spend more money.
Those are good points about that. I think that's kind of where the industry's at, is understanding, where is it most applicable. And it's a good point about the daylight. I assume there's code compliant daylighting controls and things like that in use.
Right, there's the daylight dimming, those kind of things to minimize the lighting load throughout the day.
There's a pretty sophisticated quantum dimming system on the project that it's like a processor-based system that can manage the lighting controls throughout the space. So if someone wanted to go back later and change those, make changes, the system would be able to handle it. So in one sense, even though, we may not be sure if that would be something we need right now. You know, if in 5 or 10 years they decide they do want to make changes, the system architecture is sort of set up to accept changes. It could be interesting if we were, even if we weren't doing color tuning for health purposes, it might be interesting to use it in the gallery spaces where they are maybe wanting to change the color temperature of a room while they do a dance performance or while they are rendering or displaying certain types of art. It could be interesting. But I kind of agree with Frank that the health purposes right now, the daylight coming in there is so great that I think that'll be the primary benefit for them at this point.
Great, thanks. Again, I add my congratulations to just a really beautiful project.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Any other questions from our judges?
First, I want to say congratulations, guys. This is Ruby, and the project is beautiful. It's gorgeous. It's amazing to see from outdoor perspective, or like, you know, art, and indoor is like modern art, you know. So it's great project. How many type of light do you guys have used actually here?
Oh, I can tell you. I'd have to look. I mean, maybe 80 types or so.
Okay.
A lot of those would be iterations of the same, you know, but, you know, and actually looking back at the bill of material though, it's pretty simple. There are track heads, there are linear slots, there are classroom direct indirects, there are cylindrical downlights for house lighting in the theater. And of course there are theatrical lights as well. Some uplight scoops on the exterior, site lighting, a couple of lanterns that are sort of just were going back into their own place. Wall washers. Oh, we did use some perimeter wall washers too, but you know, the sort of tools used were pretty simple tools. They were sort of all the basic tools, maybe the 10 most basic tools you could use. It was just sort of about using the right ones, I guess, for each space.
Did you stick with one company primarily for these different types, or did you use different companies?
I think it's all over the place. Yeah, we used a lot of manufacturers' products.
And was it all at like 90 CRI and above?
Not all. That wouldn't be in the budget at the time, but in the spaces we could afford it, yeah, we did do that.
It is a gorgeous project, that is for sure.
I think we have to give some credit to the architects because they they really designed this. We just helped light it.
Like Andrea said, it really goes both ways. If you don't have a good canvas, it's hard to
Paint
you're
it.
pretty limited as to what you
Yep.
can do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we had a good collaboration, I think. I mean,
Nice.
it was a lot of people had their hands in this project. This was hundreds of people working on this project.
On behalf of the National Lighting Bureau, congratulations. And we'll look forward to perhaps seeing another project from you in 2021.